Welcome to the Subjective Professor podcast, where we reject coercion and hypocrisy. This is episode 253, and we're going to talk about missiles over Ukraine, mutual assured destruction, and shot callers in DC. I came home to see that Russia had responded to Ukraine's use of American weapons and tech and personnel by shooting a what Ukraine said was a ICBM, but uh, after listening to Colonel McGregor, it's not an ICBM, but a middle range missile. So it's not intercontinental. So it's not an ICBM, technically speaking. So it's a mid-range rocket fired on a military target, hypersonic, which means that there's no way that anything could have stopped it. So, where Russia was able to shoot five of the six missiles shot into Russia from Ukraine, they were able to shoot most of them down. Ukraine, there's no way to stop these hypersonic missiles. So, I was listening to Colonel McGregor talk to Judge Napolitano. They had an interview yesterday together, and it's really unusual for him to do two in a row. But I think, given the events of today, he was like, "Got to do another one, man, because this is really off the charts, insane." So McGregor wanted to emphasize that Russia is at its highest military alert status, but the people want peace. And the reason why they're at this high alert status is because America's acting crazy, doing all these crazy things. Think about it. The American people want peace. Putin wants peace. Everyone wants peace except the deep staters, the big bankers in this country, and everyone else who's related to them. We even had an election and everyone was like, we want peace. And yet here these guys are pushing war, not only war, conventional war, but nuclear war. Then you have this guy, Rear Admiral Thomas Buchanan, make some public statements, says that America is prepared for nuclear conflict with Russia. Uh, like, hey, we'll throw some of our nukes over there, they'll throw some back at us. But, not all of it because we got to still have that deterrent aspect, which is nonsense, right? Because no one does limited war. Nuclear war, once they start shooting off, it's over, right? And anyone who studied mutual assured destruction back in the 80s, you know how this goes, you know how this plays out. There is no preparation for nuclear war. There's just Armageddon, and that's pretty much what Colonel McGregor said. And he wanted to emphasize that there are too many four-star generals and admirals in the military. Their heads are too big. So this Thomas Buchanan works under a four-star, an admiral, in the Army's equivalent of a four-star general. But he made these public statements pretty much because that's what his boss is saying. And so McGregor doesn't know who this guy is, but he should be dismissed. His, superior officer should be dismissed, right? And McGregor talks about how when Colin Powell was, in charge of the military, some general in the Air Force made some remarks which were totally inappropriate, but he was removed from his position right away. And so he believes that this person should be removed right away. And of course he should. And then Russians immediately respond to Buchanan, and this is their statement. Russia urges the U.S. to exercise restraint after Pentagon's statement on exchange of nuclear strikes. Kremlin reiterates commitment to prevent nuclear conflict, calls on the West to adopt similarly responsible stance. In other words, the Russians are being responsible and the Americans are being reckless. And that's the thing. All those people who called me a Putin apologist and stuff, because the assumption is that Putin is insane. No, they have it backwards. Obviously, it's the United States that's insane. It's the United States that's irresponsible, bunch of psychopaths, right? Doesn't care about all of the death and destruction that they bring everywhere they go. And McGregor wants everyone to know everyone loses in a nuclear war. Even if your country's not hit, there's nuclear fallout. There's the jet stream, which carries all of the radiation all over the world. Everyone is going to be affected. And he wants to make a point that men in uniform do not make policy, right? And he's basically saying this guy is completely, uh, you know, uh, incapable, does not have the authority to make these kinds of statements. And for that, he should be dismissed. And I was listening to him and I was thinking, the people who gave us Kamala Harris and Tim Walz to vote for, they are the ones that are playing war with Russia right now, except the other side is not playing the same game. In other words, who are the shot callers in Washington, D.C.? Because it's certainly not Joe Biden. It's not Kamala Harris, right? So Joe Biden is supposed to be down in the Amazon. Harris is vacationing in Hawaii. Really? Who is running the country? Who is the shot caller, right? And the shot caller basically is the one who calls the shots, the big boss that sits back and does all the orders, but doesn't actually do any of the dirty work himself. Apparently, it's a term that originated from prison. So although a person is in prison, they're still calling the shots from prison. And so who is the shot caller in DC, right? Who is the idiot that is playing this stupid game? And the idiocy is that whoever it is thinks that other people are going to play by their rules. And it kind of reminds me of the whole woke or cancel culture. I mean, they believe that everyone should be just like them, and they write all these rules to force everyone to think and act just like them. Now, they were able to get away with it here in the United States, but their BS is protected here with unjust laws. It started with trigger warnings, microaggressions, remember? Uh, because we live in the kind of society that we live in now, it was a kind of a hard sell to say that, oh, we're so oppressed. You're oppressed with your big flat screen TV, really? And so then we had to raise the ante, right? We had to make it even more uh, sort of look more closely, micro detailed for the microaggressions. And I think I had an episode early on where I would have one day set aside for Is It Racist game show day. And I would play a video clip and everyone would have to tell me, is it racist or is it not racist? And of course, I went through YouTube and I found some of the funniest things, but they were like you were feeling uncomfortable to laugh at it, right? And then after I would show every clip, and they were, of course, all of them, by my definitions, were racist, right? No matter how funny they were racist because it was a categorization, right? Highlighting a categorization based on a specific characteristic. And that's where humor comes from. And so people kind of loosened up a little. People still felt a little awkward, perhaps, but they weren't going to say anything to me because they have no basis to say. All they can say is, I don't like that humor. Okay, you don't like that humor. But we were talking about, is it racist? And yeah, it's racist. And so everything is racist. And so what do we have to do? We have to go microaggressions. We have to have safe spaces. And then you saw people talking about hate crimes, hate speech. When they were talking about this whole microaggression stuff, I pretty much told my class, I don't know, was that 10 years ago? I said, this is where it's going to go, right? Basically someone in power is going to decide that certain expressions are going to be out of bounds. And so you're not allowed to say them anymore. And here we are, hate speech, hate crime, anti-Semitism laws. And so basically, when you have power to be able to legislate, you're going to force everyone to see things your way, right? And that's where the problem comes in, right? So the fact that all of us have our own personal preferences, that's sort of the natural state of humanity. But as soon as you legislate so that your own subjectivity is law for everybody else, that's when it's a problem. I was explaining it to my sixth graders yesterday, right? Because they were joking around about this concept of racism, and I asked them, I reminded them, and I tested them. I said, "Remember what I said? What racism is?" And, because I put them on the spot, they didn't have a definition. And so I reminded them that all race is a generalization based on a physical characteristic. And so racism is to expect someone to act a certain way, treat someone a certain way because of their racial category, and then, right, treat them in a certain way. Right. And you think that you know this person because of their racial category, but that means when I look at my children, I identify them with their racial category. I treat them a certain way, and I expect them to act in a certain way because of their racial category. That is my children, right? And so, how is that bad? It's not. We call it fatherhood, but the behavior is exactly what most people would call racism. And so she said, so this one sixth grader goes, "Oh, so basically, I might like John Stamos." I know she said John Stamos. She's a sixth grader. I don't know how she know. Anyway, so she goes, "I might like John Stamos and you might like someone else. But if I write a law and says that everyone must be in love with John Stamos, then that is what makes it bad." And I said, "Exactly." Right? I was surprised that she got it, right? So everyone likes different people for different reasons. But as soon as you legislate and force everyone to do or like something that they otherwise would not, yeah, that's when we have a problem, right? Because you have no alternative. You must do it that way. And so, in order to protect these ridiculous ideas, you have these laws and regulations passed, which monopolizes thought, which creates monopoly of thought, monopoly of ideas, right? For example, intellectual property laws, that's monopoly laws, right? But the goofy thing is that they don't extend beyond the United States. I mean, I know that some companies have extended beyond the United States. But generally speaking, anyone in another country, they are not going to be held accountable to the patent laws here in the United States unless they become a billionaire, in which case it becomes a problem. But and that's why corporate espionage, that's why they call it corporate spying, right? That those terms came out of this idea of intellectual property, patent, copyright, those kinds of laws, which are basically protectionist laws. So people in the United States, they're so accustomed and so used to being able to legislate their own personal morality and saying this is law. And so if you disagree with me, you're a criminal. They believe their own crap, right? They're in a situation where they're like, oh, okay, well, I'm going to do this. I'm going to shoot missiles into your territory. That's okay. But then when you shoot missiles back at us, oh, it's on now. But you started it. And so if you listen really carefully to a lot of these left-leaning people, or and even left-leaning people on the right, right, when it comes to war, um, they don't see the hypocrisy because they ignore their own behavior. From their perspective, their behavior is all correct, all righteous, but everyone else, because it works against them, they are wrong. And they never stop to think that the dynamic is extremely hypocritical. Um, but should come as no surprise because they suffer from simplified thinking, right? The whole wokeness, woke left enterprise is simplified thinking, right? And just in case I didn't say it yet, or you couldn't put your finger on it, if you think about wokeness, the leftist, the extreme far left, is characterized with no thinking, right? There is no critical thinking at all. And the goofy thing is that they call all of their, indoctrination as critical thinking, right? Which fits right into everything else they do, right? They call themselves Antifa, anti-fascist, but they are the fascists, right? That kind of dynamic exists also when it comes to critical thinking. There is no critical thinking. It's all simplified thinking. And the way they do it is they tell everyone, if you hear this word, if you hear someone use this word, then they're a racist or they're a fascist. And so that's what you have to call them. And when you hear them use it, then this is what you say, this is what you do, and you make sure that they never have the opportunity to say that word again, right? But there's no sense of context, right? There's no understanding of why the word was even said, right? And so all of that is lost. They just fixate on the word. And so in the military, basically, it's like, oh, they fixate on other people attacking them. It's like, oh, how dare you attack me? But hey, you attacked me first. No, it doesn't matter. You attacked me, right? And so war on this level uh, is just idiotic, right? Because now you're dealing with human life. You're dealing with destruction on a massive scale, right? And so so you can see it right now in Ukraine, right? It's Russia invaded Ukraine. No, there's nothing about the bombardment of eastern Ukraine by the nationalist Nazi Ukrainians, right? There's nothing about the 2014 coup in the Ukraine where they got rid of the previous government, replaced it with someone that Victoria Nuland wanted in that position, right? And so never talk about that. Their starting point is Russia invaded, right? And on top of that, they don't talk about the coup that they had getting rid of Joe Biden and then sticking in a person like Kamala Harris, right? Just and making people think that because she is a quote unquote black woman, that's all you need to know, right? And it's that same simplistic thinking that you see on the left is what dictates all of their policies and all the behavior that they're engaging in now, right? So, oh, Russia can't do that because we're the United States and this is what we do. And so they will bend to whatever that we say. They will play the game in the way that we say it should be played. And Russia's like, no, that's not how it goes. And so, in conclusion, there has to be a reckoning, right? I mean, there really has to be a major, severe, serious reckoning, right? I saw Trump, he posted, I think on X, that he's not a vindictive person. He's not going to seek reprisals or revenge for and go after all the people who have been, going after him for the last 8 years. He's not going to do that. He's not that kind of guy, right? He's going to build bridges and make everything, feel better, make everyone feel better, that kind of thing. No. Well, he shouldn't seek revenge. He should seek justice. And justice is not the same as revenge. It's not this sort of, if you hit me, I'm going to hit you twice. It's not that. That's revenge, right? But justice is to make sure everyone understands what is and what is not acceptable, what is and is not illegal. And those who have committed crimes, right, that the average American person, if they did the same thing, they'd be rotting in jail right now. That if politicians did it, they should be in jail too. That is the justice that he should be able to pursue as president. I wish he was a more gifted speaker. I only have seen clips of that longish speech that he gave, basically explaining what he's going to be doing. I don't know why I only see clips of it, but anyway, it must be older. But if he was a really gifted speaker, a lot of people say Obama was a gifted speaker. I couldn't stand listening to him, but anyway, someone who, like an Eisenhower type guy, even a Ronald Reagan kind of guy, where he's going to explain to the American people what needs to happen and why, right? And one of these fireside chats for him to be able to explain the financial situation that we're in, right? Maybe get JD Vance to do it for him, right? He can so easily say, look, Joe and Harris, they left me a mess. It's a lot worse than I thought. And now that I'm in the White House and I'm getting all these briefings and stuff, and now I realize just how bad it is. Yeah, we have to clean house. we have to clean up this mess. And in order for us to clean up this mess, people got to go to prison, right? People have to be punished for all of the death and destruction that they have brought to the world. They must be punished. I'm hoping that that's what he'll do. I doubt he'll do it. Nevertheless, that is the hope. Because otherwise, we're just going to continue to have this kind of stupidity, this arrogant stupidity, of all this, uh, bravado with nothing, right? To basically be making all of these high risk, high expense gambles while you're holding nothing, right? While you have no leverage, no ability, no way of being able to, finish what you started. So hopefully cooler minds, justice will prevail, and the people who need to be punished are punished. That's it for this episode. I'll talk to you next time, if there is a next time.